Hey y'all, we are getting to the end of our season and series with Indonesia. And Indonesia has been such a, I guess I would say shock. When I started learning about Indonesia, all I really knew was that about the island of Bali, and that's where a lot of digital nomads go, and they buy these big fancy houses and they swim around and surf, and it's this paradise. And that's about it. So as I kept learning about Indonesia, I learned that this place is incredibly wild and diverse. I mean, it has 17,000 islands. It's a huge melting pot of cultures and religions. And this season alone, we learned about wild animals that could kill you there and how the volcanoes of Indonesia have the whole world's fate in their hand when they erupt. So I thought it was only best to end our series of Indonesia with another wild story. So today we're going to talk about the traditions and hidden tribes of these islands. We're going to cover really shocking funeral traditions you may have never heard of. We're also going to learn about a tribe that has only been discovered since the 1970s. They also have a history of cannibalism. I thought the story was going to stop there, but while I was researching this specific tribe on YouTube, I found a story done by Channel 7 Australia. And it's about a little boy named Wawa who was going to be murdered by his tribe, possibly even eaten, until Channel 7 stepped in to save him. So there's a lot to unpack here. And to help me tell the story is my Indonesian friend, Kezia, who I met in high school about probably more than 10 years ago. And we, kept up over the years, but this episode really brought us together and we got to connect. And yeah, we actually talk often now, and I'm actually going to go see her in New York and explore her city. So I am super excited. And that's just the really fun part about podcasting is just all the connections you get to have. So yes, Kezia is going to come on and help me tell this story, share parts of her culture. And we have a lot to cover, from funerals to cannibals to a real life rescue story. Let's get into it. Hey y'all, and welcome to Culture Cult. You can admit you're ignorant here and we won't judge you, but as long as you want to learn. On this podcast, I'll tell you stories I know you never learned in school, but from all 197 countries and covering as many cultures as possible. We all need to learn about each other here in the world, and this is the place to do it. So today, you landed on a country episode where we are going to learn about a whole new country. And if you ever want to come on the podcast and talk about your country and share your culture to everyone, feel free to email me at culturecultshow@gmail.com. And let's get into the episode.
I was born in Indonesia. I moved back and forth a few different times when I was a kid, because my parents were just indecisive, or they just were adventurous, best case scenario.
Yeah.
So I went to elementary school in Indonesia for 3 years, and then I permanently moved to the US when I was 10.
Okay. So you said your early childhood in Indonesia.
Yeah, about a good chunk of it.
Where in Indonesia?
I was always in Jakarta.
Okay. That's a huge city.
It is.
What was that like growing up as a child? Because I grew up in Alabama, so it's pretty low key.
Yeah. The first word that came to mind was overwhelming, because there was just so many people. And I remember there always being a lot of traffic. The food culture is great.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a lot of street food vendors. Like you basically can never go hungry if you're in Jakarta. I just remember there being so many people, and all pretty pleasant as far as I can tell, but I was also a child.
Yeah.
But I love Jakarta. It's always going to be like a special place in my heart.
Yeah. What should I eat there when I go? What's like a staple that you love?
Definitely this one dish called martabak, and it's like a very spongy, thick, sweet pancake.
Ooh.
And normally you would put chocolate or cheese or crushed peanuts on it, or all three. Honestly, a lot of people like doing all three. So martabak is a really good sweet dish. I also really like getting these fried random things in a bag, which doesn't sound delicious at all, but it's
that does sound good.
I mean, anything fried in a bag sounds good.
But also you mentioned you're Chinese Indonesian. So like I know Indonesia is a absolute, like people talk about America being a melting pot, but Indonesia is. It's like Muslim, Christian, Hinduism, like Buddhist. And then I know there's all kinds of ethnicities. You said you're Chinese Indonesian. What was that like? Did you kind of grow up relating to being Chinese?
Yeah, my family put a lot more emphasis on us being Chinese than rather being Indonesian. A lot of the things that I know about Indonesia as a country and the history, I basically picked up on it myself just because my family would always be like, no, you're Chinese, we're Chinese. Like there's always that separate distinction. And I think it's because there's such a divide between what the histories were when it came to Chinese people living in Indonesia and like the native Indonesians it's themselves.
Okay. I don't know that history. I wish I looked that up. Was it like a flood of Chinese people that came, or was it like forced immigration?
As far as I know, I think a lot of Chinese people uh, moved out of China during the communist era, so they fled to Indonesia. But then I do also remember reading about how the second president of Indonesia being really discriminatory against Chinese people. So he made a whole bunch of laws against Chinese people.
Okay.
So there's definitely like a deep divide. I don't think it's present every day, but I think a lot of Chinese Indonesians still feel tension when it comes to
Okay.
certain things.
I think that happens a lot when cultures mesh, whether it's like a new wave of culture moves into a different country. I feel like there's always about 2 to 3 generations of hostility. And then people
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
usually melt into each other and appreciate each other's food mainly and music. And yeah, I think that's like happening with Mexican culture and Latin culture in America. Like, I think
Mhm.
the first few waves, people were obviously very like racist and are racist and or like, what are you
Yeah.
doing in our country? But now we're really like, I've noticed like, well, I don't know, I live in LA, it's a bit different, but there's a more of coming together and appreciation. So I think your parents were probably, yeah, like the first wave maybe of Chinese people in a different country. And they just get that
Yeah.
backlash.
And Indonesia itself is such a complicated country with a lot of colonization in its timeline. We were colonized by the Dutch for like God knows how long, like hundreds of years. And my grandma, who was born in the 30s, even got like the tail end of that. And she's definitely told me stories when I was younger where she had to cut her hair short and dress like a boy to go to school so that she wouldn't be hurt by the Dutch soldiers and things like that. But you're absolutely right that the cultures really do mesh all together. And there's even a lot of Dutch influence when it comes to Indonesian food as well.
Oh, really? I mean, I could see that. Like, the Dutch colonized Indonesia and that created like Indonesia. People think, I thought, it's like eat, pray, love. Cause that's what, a lot of Westerners think. They're like, I want to go to Indonesia and I want to swim with dolphins and just, put flowers in my hair. And the more I learn about Indonesia, I'm like, this place is wild, y'all. Like, this is wild territory. From just starting this and doing research, like such a complex mix of cultures. And
Mhm.
like, I'm learning that Indonesia is not eat, pray, love. It's like eat, yeah, definitely pray, but like learn. I feel like
Yeah, that's a good motto.
but okay, let's talk about you coming to Atlanta though, like culture shock first, or was it?
I don't think it was a culture shock because I was so young. Yeah, the first time I was 2 years old, so I don't really have any memory of that at all. And then the second time I was 5 years old and I started kindergarten there. I don't think I really remembered such a culture shock until maybe I hit middle school or early high school where I was like, oh, okay, this is different. I don't really fit in as much.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like, how do you feel like you couldn't fit in?
Just because of there were a lot of differences in the way in which my parents would perceive life as a teenager between the way that my friends in high school would perceive life as a teenager. They didn't really see it as a necessity to like get your driver's license when you're 16 or go out to school dances and have extracurricular activities. But at the same time, there was that layered issue, I want to say, where my parents immigrated here and I became a DACA recipient. So, and you know that maybe you know or you don't know that being a DACA recipient was like highly contentious in the United States for a long time. So I think by the time that I hit high school, I just felt I started to feel really displaced in the sense that I'm definitely not an American kid, but I'm definitely not an Indonesian kid either.
I feel like so many people relate to that. And I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, well, I'm not fully this, but not fully that. So they feel like they have one foot in, one foot out. Do you feel drawn to go back to Indonesia or anything?
That's a tough question. Sometimes I have fantasies over it. I do see myself going back there to visit, but I'm not sure if I could actually live there just because I've been in the US for I want to say 15, 16 years now. So I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to visit because I think like going back, you have no idea what kind of flood of memories would even come back to you. Like just like the smells, the colors, and you might feel a little bit confused there too because now you've kind of acclimated in Western culture and now, but you
For
were
sure.
born there, so that would be really fascinating just to hear about your visit whenever you do go. And that's why I think this episode's gonna be really cool because we're gonna talk about I don't know, maybe if you know stuff like please interject. But I have a lot of stuff I wanted to cover on this because there's so much to do with Indonesia. There's so much.
Yeah.
It was actually intimidating doing this country. I thought it was gonna be really easygoing, and then I started learning, and I was like, oh shit. So I'm like, oh my god. So like, yeah, if you know, I want to jump right into the tribes because as I was saying, there's places like Jakarta, Bali, like all these places we're very familiar with, and then there's 17,000 islands.
Yeah.
Like I can't even comprehend that number. It's 600 different ethnic groups. There's so much to cover. So are you familiar with any of the funeral traditions? Like, have you heard of any funeral traditions in Indonesia?
I have heard of this one particular, I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically where they, instead of having it be a time of mourning, it's a really like time of celebration and they have a parade around it. They burn the body in front of everybody and play music and dance with all these really pretty colors and maybe even some sparklers or things like that. And I know that's in Bali.
Yeah. So I was looking up Sulawesi, and there's a people called the Toraja, and they do that. So they believe that death is, or like you should be celebrating life, like death is a climax of life. And they have, this crazy party. It's called known as the Rambu Solo. And the entire town's in on it. Like there's dancing, like there's parades. It's the coolest funeral ever. And because I think they're actually going to a place called Poyo. Like it's their kind of heaven or their final resting place. Right. And that's their way of celebrating life. Because I find funerals absolutely depressing as most would. And it's a great way to remember the person. But what's interesting is obviously these parties cost a lot of money. And so people have to save for years, but they can't just bury the body if they have to wait for years. So the deceased person usually lives in their house in a different room. They have their own room and they sit there and they decay in their house and they come and they bring them tea and talk to them and the children come and talk to them.
Whoa.
I know. It's called a Mukula, Makula. And essentially the person, their deceased loved one, lives in their house until they can afford the party. You should look it up. At first, it's obviously shocking, like seeing a dead body, because we just don't see that. We immediately even the Queen Elizabeth died, and she's been buried in like 3 days. We get no time for mourning. Meanwhile, these people have years to mourn this person and talk to them and kind of watch their soul leave and their body decay, and then they do the party once they can afford. Wow. So it might be 10 years of someone in your house.
Wow. I actually find that kind of sweet because it really allows their loved ones to see the process of this person leaving. And I think a lot of people off the cuff might be like, oh, that's so creepy for kids. Like, why would they let their kids near that? But I think it normalizes the idea of death for kids, which can be really healing and help them mature too.
Yeah, there's a documentary of like a British woman. She just lost her dad and they sent her out to like kind of experience the funeral practices. And like, yeah, the kids were just chilling next to grandpa. And at first she was shocked. And then she was like, you know what? I wish, not that she wished she had that with her dad, but she was like, this is nice to see them slowly grieve and then go into celebrating versus like, she's like, we buried my dad in 3 days and I can't get over it. I don't understand that he's not here anymore. And meanwhile, like these kids understand death more than we do. So at first, when you look it up, it is that first initial reaction of horror, you know, of just like seeing like, cause you could go into someone's house in Indonesia and you know, old grandma is sitting there drinking tea. So it's something that you could possibly see over there. And so they also do something after they bury them. Some of them after 3 years, actually every 3 years, they'll bring the body back up, wash, clean, dress, and everyone starts taking pictures with them.
Wow.
Like, so maybe they're not able to like let go because they keep bringing up the body, but also it's like, it's just, I guess, their way of keeping them alive.
Yeah, I do find it intriguing, your argument that in one way it's as if you can't let go, but at the same time we can also see it as constantly preserving the memory of someone who was so special and part of your community.
Yeah. I think like there's no one way to feel any emotion.
Yeah, I feel like as a culture in the US at least, we view grief as such a like, okay, somebody died, we do the funeral and you get time off from work or from school and presumably you're fine.
Yeah.
But this is actually something that I was talking about with my therapist as well. And it's that grief isn't a linear process. It's there's a lot of ebbing like flow, and sometimes you feel like you're closer and sometimes you feel like you're further away. And I think it's really wonderful to allow yourself to go back and revisit and allow yourself to move forward as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. It's not linear. And I think in Western culture, it's all about suppressing emotions. So like when you go to a funeral, you might shed a tear, but really you want to scream, you know? And a lot of cultures, they just scream. Like in Arab cultures, you're allowed to pull your hair, scream, like be emotional. And like here, it's like their emotions are celebration, you know, like, that's how I want to do it. I really have taken this into thought. Like how I want my funeral to be. I don't want it to be a somber occasion. I want there to be a party and the music I love and food, my favorite food, and like it to be ideally at a lake, you know, with a bonfire, you know, like a whole thing. But I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is so much better. So I think we could take a lot from this. I think we should look at different ways of grieving, you know. Another one they did was, so if a baby dies before a certain age, 6 months, they wrap them in leaves and bury them at the base of a tara tree. And so there's these trees with holes in them and wood covering up the holes. And that's where they go to see their child because it is given back to like the womb of the tree.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's super cool. That's so poetic.
Yeah, it is. And you can go see it. And it's like really, honestly, really beautiful. This whole area, I think, is really into their funeral practices. So I feel like if you're really into Indonesian culture and, you know, ancient tribal culture, that's, I think, a great island to go to. Because people, again, just go to Bali and think, I did Indonesia. It's like, no. Like, if you haven't seen someone decaying in a house and gone to a funeral party, you haven't gone to Indonesia, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just think of Bali as resorts and wonderful beaches, yoga, things like that. But it's a lot more.
It's scratching the surface, you know? And I did want to end this episode covering the Korowai people on the island of Papua. And we're also going to cover I can't believe I found this story, a story of a little boy who escaped a death sentence in his tribe. It's also a tribe known to be cannibals.
Minor comment. I have heard of the tribe who are cannibals. I can't remember the name. So I'm excited about this one too.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have heard of this tribe, but they're officially called the Korowai. They live there's like Papua Guinea. And so this tribe is one of the most isolated and ancient tribes on earth. And they're deep, deep in the jungle. It would take you days of trekking to even find them. And yeah, even today, it would take you would have to really look. And before 1970, they were completely cut off from the world. like the 70s. That's not long ago. So they had no idea about planes or trains or like nothing.
Whoa. Oh my
Nothing.
gosh.
They've been living in their society, cut off, doing their thing for centuries until 1970. So they had no idea anything else existed around them. But in 1974, they were first discovered by a group of lost scientists who entered the territory of the tribe. I mean, talk about shock. I'm sure they
Oh
both
my
like,
goodness. Yeah, that would be my reaction. That would be my reaction if I was part of the tribe, and my reaction if I was the scientist.
Oh, if I was a scientist, I'd be like, oh shit. Like immediately, I'm like, yo, we gotta go. And I'm sure and first of all, the people of this tribe are Black, which I think is confusing because a lot of Indonesians are Asian. I need to look this up. I don't understand why this island has clearly like African descent. Okay, so I did some quick research on this because I'm still really curious about the huge ethnic diversity that you can see in Indonesia. So why are there Black people on some islands like Papua Guinea? And how come they look so different from other people on other islands? I got most of this information from a website called diasporicdish.com. I know I'm saying that wrong. Diasporicdish.com. Okay, well, from that website, apparently the people on Papua Guinea were descendants of migrants out of Africa in one of the earlier waves of human migration. Melanesians, that's what they're called, are thought to have migrated from Oceania from Africa during one of the first waves of human migration about 50,000 years ago. They settled in a region known as Melanesia. Melanesia is made up of the independent countries of Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Vanuatu, and the Solomon Islands. It also includes the French New Caledonia and the Indonesian provinces of Papua and West Papua. And its relative isolation explains the cultural and linguistic diversity that has persisted to this day. So it seems like the very first wave of people from Africa made it to these specific islands, but these islands are very isolated. As we will learn about the tribe of the Korowai, they have been completely isolated for like centuries. So I guess that's why they haven't really mixed or done any. And so that's why their language and their skin tone and everything we see is completely ancient. They are a time capsule, and it is so cool. I'm glad I got to look that up. And so I know they've never seen a white person. And this is now the 70s, and this is their first time ever seeing a white person.
Yeah.
So it's a big shock, I'm sure, for everyone that day. And they actually decided to stay and study and record the lives of them. And also in 1978, a Dutch missionary named Johannes Veldhuizen, hopefully that was correct, also accidentally encountered them. So I don't know what they were doing in those jungles, but to accidentally discover them is pretty insane. And there are about 4,000 Korowai dispersed in villages throughout the jungle. And they are known to have these 50-meter high tree houses, which are really impressive, honestly. And the whole family sleeps there. So there's like the men on one side, the women on the other. They have 2 active fire pits in the treehouse. They do everything in this treehouse. And do it to protect themselves, obviously, from the jungle and from other tribes. And they eat jungle rats and snakes and bugs. And they really mainly eat sago. Like if they can't find like meat, they eat sago, which is a tree, and they cut it down. They make it into a paste and they wrap it up and toast it over the fire. And I was watching, it's a really good show. It's called The Best Ever Review Show. The host visited them and they made food for them. And they kind of like put all the bugs and the rats and whatever, the snakes, whatever they can find. And this sago, they roast it and it kind of comes out as like this chewy, squishy pizza. I'm calling it pizza because it's like it looks really good. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with sago. It's a Indonesian staple.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, we put it in a lot of desserts usually. Oh. It's similar to
like mochi.
Yeah, it has a similar consistency to like mochi or tapioca.
I love chewy food. Holy
Yeah,
crap.
it's super chewy. It's a lot of fun to eat.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. It's like, I would definitely eat this. I know it has all this stuff that I don't like in it, which are bugs, but like, I was like, you know what? This looks pretty good. But that's interesting that you actually have some weird connection to these people. Like, y'all both have eaten sago or eat sago.
Yeah, yeah,
But they also have been known to eat humans, which is what they're known for.
Yes.
And obviously we have our Hollywood perspective of cannibals and everything. This is not their regular diet. It's just mainly after they kill someone, they think it's a power move. If we just fought and I killed you, the most powerful thing I could do is to eat you. I've completely destroyed you and your power. Another way is they think there's a demonic spirit in people sometimes called I could be pronouncing it wrong, kakua, Khakkua. And they think the demonic spirit could be attached to anyone. So it could be your dad, your mom, your brother. It doesn't matter. If you have a demonic spirit, they're going to kill you. It doesn't matter who it is in your life. And they've killed their brothers and friends, just stabbed them and then roasted them and ate them with the sago because they're like, you're demonic. You have bad energy attached to you. We've got to eat you to get rid of the spirit.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, like, except there's no, like, it's kind of like a witch hunt. There's no rules to who's demonic. It's like, Kasia is kind of acting suspicious or something bad's happened to her. I don't want it to happen to me. So I think we should kill her. And we all come as a group and decide, yeah, she's got to go. And so you're kind of isolated at first and while everyone's deciding. And you guys, you have to remember, like, there's nowhere for these people to go. Like, imagine you only know 20 people in your life. Suddenly those 20 people turn on you and they're all now thinking like, yeah, we probably should kill you. It's incredibly anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I think it does become a witch hunt. I wonder what the parameters are.
I don't know. So an example of this, and this is the story I found, which is pretty crazy. So I was looking up, stuff on the Korowai, and Channel 7 Australia did a documentary on it. And they just were essentially going in there just to, talk about the Korowai. And they went to the jungle and they saw this little boy, he was like 6 years old, not eating with everyone, literally on the outskirts, super freaking scared. And they were like, hey, what's going on with them? And they're like, both of his parents just died. He's bad energy. He's a demon attached to him. You can't have him around. We might kill him. We don't know what we're doing yet. He's 6. He's literally 6. His name's Wawa. And so one of the Indonesian guides they chose to like come on the trip he knows the area very well. His name's Cornelius Simberink. And he was like, this is not okay. Like, I do not want this kid to be killed and definitely maybe possibly eaten. And so he talked to Wawa's uncle and he was like, do you care if I take Wawa out of the tribe to live with me? I don't know if it's Jakarta, but they're living in a bigger city. And his uncle was like, yeah, you can take him. This turned into like a rescue mission. This was just supposed to be like observational documentary, no interaction. And now they're going in the middle of the night to take Wawa without the rest of the tribe knowing, which is super dangerous.
Wow.
Yeah. They go in, they take Wawa, they trek in the middle of the night all the way out of the woods off the island, and they take him back to Cornelius's home. It's like a Jakarta. It's a very big city. And there he is taken away from everything he knows, and he's raised there. And I mean, we were talking about culture shock earlier. Like, imagine what that must have been like for Wawa.
And on top of that, he probably didn't have any semblance of the language. Language would be completely different.
Everything. So in his tribe, he wears no clothes. Everything they eat, they get that day. And they cook all together by the fire. They sleep all together. It's very communal. The language isn't the same at all. He also is not even the same color as the people he's moving into. His dad's definitely Indonesian. So, I mean, like, what's the biggest place you think you experienced culture shock? Because you said Atlanta wasn't that big, but was it New York?
I think it must have been New York, just because there's so much going on here. Yeah. Wow. I'm having so many flashbacks while talking about all of this, but I do remember a big culture shock for me was when I first went to school in Atlanta when I was 5 or 6. I must have been 5. And the teacher was speaking to me in English and I was replying to her in Indonesian.
Oh.
So we were probably like having this scientist and Korowai person type interaction where neither of us are understanding each other, but we're trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. He had to completely start from absolute scratch of learning Indonesian. And now he's going to schools. He's joined a church. He's wearing clothes. He's with an entirely new family. Like, I think he has a brother, a sister, a mom, and a dad now. He just lost both of his parents, mind you. So, I mean, like, everything in his life has completely been uprooted. And he doesn't know why either. I'm sure they weren't like, hey, they were going to kill you, so we're taking you. Like, you don't tell a 6-year-old that. So, and all in his eyes is, I don't live in the jungle anymore. I'm wearing something on my body. I'm sitting down all day. People are talking to me in a different language. Like, I don't know what that's like. I truly don't. So we had to kind of get in his head a little bit, how different that must have been. And so you reach 16, like, just I'm sure like that, how you're saying in your time period, in that time of your life, you were starting to notice there's a connection you're kind of missing with Indonesia. And he was starting to feel that, you know, like, I'm sure he's kind of missing, like, where do I come from really? And like, why do I live there? And I'm sure they told him his story. And so at 16, he and Cornelius and Channel 7 crew, which is super cool, they like still on this, decided to go back.
Okay, that is the plot twist I was not expecting. Oh okay.
They actually decided to go back. And remember, guys, they stole him in the middle of the night with the permission of his uncle. But one day this tribe woke up and Wawa wasn't there. And so now he's a grown man wearing clothes with a completely new outlook in life. And he's going back to a place where they literally were suspicious of him being a demon. So they were going to kill him at 6. Now imagine you're a grown man. You're actually a physical threat to people. Like, we don't know how they're going to react. So it's a huge risk and emotional risk. So he's going back. They fly in actually. And what does he see? He sees his entire tribe waiting for him when he landed. Their reaction of everyone was emotion. All the women were just crying. The men who were trying to kill him were also crying. They felt horrible. Like, the children were touching him and we're like, wow, like, cause he's the one who left, you know, and now he's wearing clothes and he looks pretty different. He's older and it's an emotional day in general. He's crying. It's a lot, but it's not all roses. He was like, where's my uncle? And they're like, we killed him. They stabbed him because, not because of this, but because he was having an affair with someone else's wife, and they stabbed both of them, like
both the woman and the uncle.
Separately. They bound her up. They stabbed her multiple times. With him, I think they just stabbed him one time, and it wasn't like explicit, but it kind of was assumed they did eat them. So this day is so emotional. So he goes back to his tribe. He takes off his clothes. They put on a certain thing on his genitals where I think it means you're a man, and it's like a leaf, and they go hunting. They eat sago together, but they really have a deep conversation, and he sits down with all of them, and he really goes back there for a purpose to talk about love, honestly, like how to not kill people when you have a confrontation, how to discuss things. And he sits down with all the tribe, with the people who tried to kill him when he was 6. And he was like, hey guys, like, I think when we have confrontations, we shouldn't be murdering people. And not even just out of love, out of like logistical reasons, because he was explaining, I've seen the outside world. They're encroaching on our jungles. Like, they're out there. It's a big, we're out there. It's not just you. It's not just the neighboring tribe. If we keep killing each other over disagreements, we're weakening our tribe. So whoever comes in and tries to take our land or tries to threaten you, you're not going to have anyone left. And they were really dumbfounded by it. And they actually asked him to be the leader.
Whoa. Okay. That's a double plot twist.
I know. I know. Like, this
I'm
is like,
so emotional.
I know. Same. My mouth was like dropped this entire time I was watching the documentary. I was like,
okay.
This is insane.
Okay. So they ask him to be the leader, and then what?
Yeah. Well, now he has to first, like, he's seeing these people who tried to kill him. Now, like, he realizes they killed his uncle. He's trying to tell them, like, guys, don't be killing people. And now the people who try to kill him are like, please lead us. Because I think they see how much wisdom he has. And he politely declines because I think he really, I think, has gotten adjusted to the modern world. And the life of the Korowai is hard. Like,
understandable.
yeah. You need to find your own water. You may not have food for days because it's a jungle, guys. It's not an easy life. Also, he's really gotten accustomed to being the social life of being in a modern world, being in a soccer team, joining church, like women, like
women.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in my perspective, like I probably might have declined too, because you just see all that's out there. But he was explaining, killing is not the way. But I have another plot twist. So I literally found Wawa on Instagram.
Okay, hold on. He has an Instagram. Hold on.
Yo, he has an Instagram. This guy was born in pretty much the stone age of technology has an Instagram, and I reached out to him.
Wow.
I was
oh
like,
my God, you slid into the DMs.
I know. I was like, hey, Wawa, do you want to come on my podcast? And we just FaceTimed the other day. He doesn't know a lot of English. So we use mainly Google Translate, and he wants to come on. So yeah.
Does he speak Indonesian?
He does. I messaged him in Indonesian on WhatsApp. I was like explaining who I am. I really want to tell Wawa's story. I really want to talk about what it's like to live in two worlds. But we have so much to talk about. Are you fluent still?
I am.
Yes.
Yes, I am fluent in Indonesian, and I'd be happy to translate for you.
Oh my God, please. But this is an incredible moment, because this is why I want to do this podcast, because I just want to learn about other people's lives and perspectives. And the fact that I get to talk to someone and share with y'all, someone who's literally from a life we don't understand. I did want to talk about the Korowai just for a second, because they haven't been affected by the modern world after the 70s. The camera crew, it's just inevitable. Obviously, they did everything they could to be respectable, but camera crews are infiltrating their lives by going in. And now a lot of the Korowai don't even live in their tribes. So it's just the old generations, like the elderly, are living in these tree houses alone. And the younger generations, like Wawa, are so enticed by the modern world and how easier it is and how much, opportunity there is. They're living in the cities. So if you try to look up the Korowai, a lot of these things are going to be fake, because not fake, but infiltrated. Yeah. Because what's happening is the camera crew are low-key paying the Korowai people in the cities to go back into their tribes, build them tree houses that are 100 feet tall just for the looks, but they put up back on their clothes, and they do sago in front of them. And then after the gig's done, they go back into the cities and they have money in their hands.
Oh, wow.
So I do want to recommend this documentary. I'll have it in the show notes. This is real. Like, we have Wawa to talk about it. And there's another one BBC did. They were going to publish the first one, but as they were recording it, they realized, oh my God, y'all are being paid to do this. So then one of the guys was like, I'm going to live with y'all for a year. And he lived with him for a year with the elder generation. So the BBC documentary will be in the show notes. That's a good documentary if you actually wanted to see the Korowai. They'll be in the show notes. But just keep in mind, their world's already changing. It's an active story.
Oh, it's so mind-blowing to me whenever I hear about small subsects of cultures that are literally transforming actively during our time. Wow. This is a little bit off topic, but it's just reminding me of the Jews who lived in Harbin, China. Have you ever heard about that? Oh, it could be a whole different story. There used to be a community of about 500 Jews that lived in this little town called Harbin in China. And they were also displaced. And now I think there's only one Jewish person left living in that town. Yeah. The question that comes to mind, though, is there a way to preserve the culture without all of the violence, and somehow introduce the idea that technology, clothing, and a more modern way of living isn't anything that's disrespectful or cutting off traditions? Because I think that's the quote unquote harm that older generations think, if you're not doing it the traditional way, then you're betraying the culture.
I don't know. I mean, that's definitely what the motive for what he went back there for was. He was like, if there's one thing I definitely can show you from the modern world, is we don't kill each other if we have suspicions or if we are confused or scared. We don't kill each other. We talk it out. And so I think that's something awesome that he got to bring to them, because they've been doing that for, since the beginning of time, like just killing as a way to get rid of a problem, or a person.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And a lot of them, the second time the camera crew in, a lot of them were wearing clothes. Yeah, I think like it's not all bad, I guess, adopting the best of both worlds, and getting maybe rid of the things that aren't good. Just how I think we could be on our high horse, like the modern world. These guys are showing us things that we need to like. I don't know. I've been craving an experience like this. I want to go in the middle of the jungle, not the jungle. I hate the jungle. Sorry. I hate the bugs. The forest. And I would love to learn about how to live off the land. I want to do something like that. And I want to learn, okay, guys, how are we going to find water today? How are we going to find our food? How do I build a fire in the middle of the rain? I genuinely want to learn how to do that. And these people are holding how we actually are. We are one with nature. But the minute we lose that, like that information, that terrifies me. These people hold the secrets of how we've been living for centuries.
Absolutely.
I don't want to lose that.
I actually also want to learn how to live off the land like that, even if it's just purely out of curiosity or just in case for emergencies. I think it's something that's really valuable to be able to go back to so many generations and remember where we came from in this strange way, to put it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the question I want to ask, Wawa. I really want to talk about, like, you are one of the few people who've lived in both worlds, and how do we preserve the old world? And I think we could learn so much from them, and that this is an unfolding story. And like Wawa, we're going to have him on. Yeah. This was a huge episode. Did you learn anything new about like your heritage or your country?
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea about the Korowai people. I had no idea about all of the different practices that the Sulawesi people did for funerals. And it's just wonderful to remember all the different kinds of cultures and food in Indonesia.
It's also kind of beautiful to look back and be like, I'm from such a cool country. My country is so unique. Throughout this series of Indonesia, we talked about all the wildlife there. We talked about the Komodo dragons and how insanely wild it is out there. And then we covered how the nature of Indonesia holds the fate for the world, pretty much. Like the volcanoes that are in Indonesia, when they erupt, they change the entire climate of the entire world. Indonesia is a powerhouse. It's a hotspot for so many different kinds of people and animals. And like, it's actually a hotspot. Like, it's consistently producing islands. It's a wild place. But any lasting thoughts you want to talk about with Indonesia?
No, I think we covered a lot, and I'm just so happy to be here and learning with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I feel like I learned so much. So if y'all are cult members, stay tuned. We're going to do a guest post talk where we talk about some fun question roulette. And if you want to be a cult member and just, help contribute to the podcast, the sign up is in the show notes. And definitely stay tuned, y'all, for Wawa's exclusive interview. I had that in the works. As I'm talking, I could already have been posted. I don't know. We're figuring it out. I hope y'all learned a lot from this episode. I personally didn't know anything about these funeral traditions. I didn't know about the Korowai. I didn't know about Wawa. I didn't know about the story until I did all this research. So I hope y'all have learned a lot. And so just a little update with the story of Wawa. So yes, I have been in contact with him. This episode we are listening to now was recorded about 6 to 7 months ago. And that's how long it's been taking to get this interview scheduled with Wawa. Kezia is my translator, and she's really helping me out with this. We've tried 2 times to get him on the phone, but with the time zones and with the different social norms, it's very interesting. So we are trying a 3rd time again this week to get his interview. And so just be patient with this story. When it comes out, you will definitely know, because this is going to be such a special episode. I can't even believe I and Kezia get to experience this interview with someone who's lived in 2 different worlds and has lived so many lives at his age. So I hope y'all enjoyed this episode, and as like a little bit of a season finale of Indonesia. And keep your eye out for Wawa's exclusive interview.